Ready? I call today's committee meeting to order, and we will begin with a roll call. Present. Here.
Here.
I assume it's me because Rodney just spoke, but I can't hear Tammy, but I'm present. Daniel.
Present.
Here.
Present. At this time, I call on Ms. Houston to read the ethics awareness statement for us, please.
Welcome to this meeting of the Elizabeth City Pasco-Tank County Board of Education. It is my duty to remind members of this board that it is your responsibility. It is my duty to remind members of this board that it is your responsibility to avoid all conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest in accordance with Chapter 138A of North Carolina General Statutes. As public servants, it is our duty to continually monitor, evaluate, and manage our personal, financial, and professional affairs in such a way as to ensure the absence of conflicts or potential conflicts. Does any member know of any conflict of interest or potential conflicts of interest with respect to any matter coming before this board this evening? Let the records reflect that no conflicts exist.
I'd like to offer a motion for approval of the Are we ready? Okay. I'd like to offer a motion to approve today's agenda for the committee meeting, and I need a second from the floor.
Second.
All in favor, and we need a roll call vote.
Pam Pereza.
Yes.
Is it my turn again? Yes, if it's my turn. I can't hear, so.
Yes.
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 And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ingram for remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Warden. And I'm going to read this so I don't miss anything. A couple of updates for the board. Our COVID testing program through the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. School districts in North Carolina have the opportunity to opt into a COVID testing program via NCD-HHS. The Elizabeth City Pasco-Tank Public Schools opted to participate in the program and will coordinate with MACO, a state-assigned vendor. Elizabeth City Pasco-Tank Public Schools has scheduled a call with the Department of Health and Human Services this week to gain additional information and to participate in the onboarding process. More information will be provided following our meeting with MACO. Mr. Jamie Liberman, Director of Exceptional Children, will be our point of contact for this initiative. And vaccine clinic opportunity for students 12 and older. The Albemarle Regional Health Services will hold a drive-through vaccine clinic for parents and guardians who wish to bring their children 12 years of age or older. This is not required. It's only an opportunity for those wishing to receive the vaccination for their child. The clinic is scheduled for September 29th from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., which is a 3-hour early release day for students. And we are requesting that parents and guardians attend the clinic with their children. We have provided a survey for parents to complete so that it will better help us determine the number of those interested. And we will update the public and the parents on a location for the clinic later this week once we get all of the surveys in and we determine the best central location for that. So thank you, Chair Warden. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to financial, business, and technology. And we're going to start with Marlene Wilkins' report for maintenance. That's for information. Does anyone have any questions or concerns in regard to that report? Is Ms. Wilkins available for questions or comments? Mr. Jackson Hurd?
I'm here, but I can barely hear you.
Okay. Ms. Wilkins, I do have a question about the window at Sheep, SL Sheep. What is the progress on repairing that window?
The glass has been ordered, it's not in yet.
Okay, the glass has been ordered?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and
The day of the accident, it was ordered.
when do you anticipate it coming in?
He said it would be a 5 to 7 day window depending on if he can get it from his vendor. But I can follow up on that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, any other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
or concerns?
I have a question about the air conditioning, especially in one room there, Northeastern High School, that even had like a moldy smell to it. I forgot the room number. Have you heard anything on that, Ms. Wilkins?
No, sir, I have not. I have to follow up with the custodian.
Because I understand there was a work order put in for it.
I will have to check on that for you, Mr. Archuleta.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hey, any other questions or concerns about the maintenance report? All right, we'll move on to the surplus list. Any questions there? And that will go to the consent agenda for Monday night's meeting to take action on.
I do have a question.
Okay,
I do have a question regarding air conditioning. I think it was P.W. Moore. Is that something that has been addressed? I think a concern with air conditioning at P.W. Moore. I think that was mentioned before.
Yes, ma'am. It has been.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
any other thing concerning the surplus list? Okay, now the Tri-Solutions contract, Ms. Haynes. And she will also report on a quote from New Sela and the budget amendment. So we'll take those, and all of those items will go forward on the consent agenda for Monday night's meeting.
Chair Warden, Vice Chair Perez, Committee Vice Chair Walton. First item on the agenda for finance FPTs are three are the quotes from Tri-Solutions. Today's project at the elementary and middle schools.
I'm
This
sorry,
project-
Ms. Haynes, could you speak up?
Sure. You want me to start over, Mr. Archuleta?
No, ma'am, it's just I was having.
Okay. This project was started with special funding provided by the county, and ECPPS has requested to use the CARES Act fund in PRC 163 to complete the remaining schools. Attached in your packet is the sole source procurement approval from DPI. The anticipated cost to complete the project is $129,570.50. This includes a portion of Pasco Tank Elementary, Sheep Harney Elementary, Central Elementary, and restroom floors at both. Are there any questions about this project? If there are no questions, the next item on the agenda is FBT 04. It's the quote from Uzella, the amount of $75,000. Uzella is an instructional content platform that provides engaging content with integrated assessments. It aligns core curriculum to standards. For example, a student could be reading a science article in ELA that also covers a science content standard. If you have any technical questions, Dr. Spencer. And the final item on the agenda for finance is FBT 05, and it's the budget amendment number 301. This amendment increases the federal grants fund by $1,367.25, and establishes the initial budgets and carryover budgets for PRCs. Questions?
If there are no questions for Mrs. Haynes, we need a roll call vote to put these on the agenda for action for Monday night. A motion and a second from the floor, please.
I'd like to make the motion, if everyone can hear me, that we put the items, maintenance report information, FBT 01, FBT 02, the surplus list, FBT 03, Price Solutions contract, and FBT 04, the Nucila code for consent agenda for 27th Monday night.
Also FBT 05, which is the budget amendment.
Yes, in the budget. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay,
And I'll second it.
all right. Been a motion and a second to put the items FBT 02, 03, 04, and 05 on the agenda for action on at Monday night's meeting. Is there any discussion? Okay, we will take a roll call vote at this time.
Pam Pereza. Rodney Walton.
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
George Archuleta.
Yes,
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you for that report, Ms. Haynes. And the Financial Committee ends our report for today. And we will go on to personalized education. Ms. Pereza.
Good evening, Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, Interim Superintendent Dr. Ingram, board members, colleagues, and to our families. Last month, I came before the board, well, earlier this month, I came before the board to request some positions for our virtual learning options that we've extended to our students. And I will share, at this point, I think we are ready to move on 4 teachers for the virtual option. And last month, I also, in another month, I also asked if you would consider us having applications for those teachers who may be interested in teaching both face-to-face students and virtual students simultaneously. I want to give you an update on that progress. So I sent a survey out and we had 80 people to respond to the survey. Of those 80, it was actually 79 who were actual teachers. And 52% of those, 52 said that they would be willing to teach both face-to-face and virtual simultaneously. And that was 65% of those who responded. Then there were 56 or 70% saying that they would be willing to teach students evenings or weekends. I think Dr. Williams asked if we could consider something like that. So we did get, people said they would be interested. And of those, about 27 of those, that's still about roughly 70% said that they would be willing to do both. And so we did get them from all grade levels. I'll ask Ms. Sawyer if she'll put up the chart, and I can just kind of go over from the responses that they gave, where they came from. Zoom in at all?
That's as big as it can be.
Well, I'll just go ahead and say we did get them from pretty much all schools, all grade levels. If you have some specifics, I will share if you have any specific questions. And I will have, next week, I'll have a breakdown of that as a handout that I can give to you.
Would
Yes,
you
yes,
mind
sir.
repeating, not the percentage, but the exact number that were willing to teach in person and virtual?
The ones who were willing to teach simultaneously,
Yes.
that was,
52, did I get that number right?
yes, sir, 52 or 65% of that.
And how about the ones that were for evening and weekends?
For evenings and weekends, it was 56.
But those willing to teach both, I thought that was 27.
Say that again.
Both willing to teach both, I thought that number was 27.
Well, the way that they, when you do a sort, it'll have just that number who have chosen both. So who have chosen both
Mhm.
was, and they have it grouped that way. That was 27 or approximately.
That's for evening and weekends, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me put it this way. Of the chart, of the graph, Tammy, can you pull up that last graph? And it says hybrid teaching, and this is the question was, I am interested in being considered for, and I have checked all that apply. And that first bar has hybrid teaching, and that is teaching students who are both face-to-face and virtual simultaneously. And that's the 52%, 52, the number 52, or 65% of those who responded. And then the second graph says teaching virtual students evenings and or possibly Saturdays before noon. And that was 56 who said that they were willing to do that, or 70%. Then that other group that I was saying, if you combine, who said they want to be able to do both, and that was at 27.
I have a question. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
All right, so the numbers you're giving us, you said 52 and 56, those are actual number of people, right? I thought you said we only had 80 responses and 79 were teachers, so
Yes, so that's
that's
what I was saying.
52?
So the way that this is broken down is actually for, that's the way it's given the bar graph, because of those who responded, that's the number who said they would be willing to teach. That first one is willing to teach simultaneously those students who are face-to-face and virtual. That second graph is who are willing to teach evenings and weekends. Of that, of those 79, 80 teachers who responded. But then when you break it down to the actual numbers that you have for hybrid, it was 24, for both 27, evenings and weekends is 28. And that gives you that total of 79.
Okay. So 52 actual teachers, so they're willing to do the simultaneous teaching out of the 80 teachers. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, so it was 80 respondents. You can see, if you can see it on your screen, you probably see the 80 it was 80 responses. But out of the 80, it's actually 79 who are actual teachers who would be able to do that. Because one wouldn't be even eligible to do it. They replied, but they're not really teachers.
So for clarification for me, so when I'm looking at this hybrid teaching, students who are both face-to-face and virtual simultaneously, 52 teachers said yes. And then I look at the next graph, it says teachers teaching virtual evening and possibly Saturday and before noon. So is it a good assumption to say these teachers responded to both of these questions? Saying they're willing to teach face-to-face and they're willing to teach for evenings and
that is correct.
Saturdays?
Yes, that is correct. Because I don't know if you can see.
So that's why I was looking at the clarification of those numbers just still didn't add up by number of teachers, but looking at it that way, it would add up. Go ahead.
So if you can see, you can probably see your screen a little better. At the top of those bar graphs, it has, I am interested in being considered for, and it has check all that apply. So they could have just checked virtual and teaching students virtual and face-to-face simultaneously, or they could have just checked teaching students evenings or weekends, or they could have checked both.
Got it. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. I don't see that on the screen, so that's what I was looking for to make, and that now helps it make sense for those numbers. They can check multiple options.
That is correct.
Right. Yeah, I can't see that on the screen anywhere. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I may be a little early with this question, but when we talked the last meeting about the 25 teachers.
Now, another question for these responses. I know you had the other graph up earlier. How do these break down for as grade levels, or is that later on in the presentation?
Well, Tammy can bring up the bar graph. I mean the pie graph. You just can't see it, but from grade level wise, we had 4 teachers from kindergarten, 10 from first grade, 6 from 7th grade, 5 from 3rd grade, and this is throughout the district. 2nd from 4th grade, 5 from 5th grade, 4 from 6th grade, 3 from 7th grade, 4 from 8th grade, 11 from 9th grade, 12 from 10th grade, or who teach 10th graders, should I say, 6 who teach 11th grade students, and 8 teachers who teach 12th grade students who responded.
So these are responses. How many of those? Hold on, I was muted. Okay, so out of those, and I'm just asking this question so I don't see percentages and I don't see these numbers. How many of those teachers that responded, how does that relate to what you just shared with us on the previous screen about doing virtual and in person and the weekends? Number wise, not percentage, how many teachers do we have willing to teach, like for middle school? How many willing to teach for high school? How many is willing to teach for a certain grade? Is that in that number? Because I see some responses.
Right, those are the ones who had responded. That was a breakdown of the ones who responded. But we do have a separate spreadsheet that has it listed out who, because one of the questions, do you mind reading the questions that was asked? Yes. But one of the questions asked what they were certified in, even if they, for instance, if they were teaching first grade right now, they may be willing to, their license is from K6. They may be willing to do a teaching fifth graders, evenings or weekends. So that was one of the questions too, what what you were licensed in and what you would be willing to teach. So here's the question. It has, I currently teach the following subjects, and they had to type it in, that was a written response.
Can you clear out that box that says customize your own view by dragging one or more? Whoever has that up there.
And then it has a whole like license, teaching license in the following areas. And then they had to respond with a long answer. And then it's one that has, I am interested in being considered for, and then it has check all that apply in parentheses. And then that's the those responses that I just went over on those that had the bar graphs. And that was pretty much the questions that was asked, other than their names and, you know, the background information like the schools where they're teaching and what they were currently teaching.
Excuse me, Miss James Davis, maybe I'm ignorant here, but I'm still confused. We got 52 that's willing to teach face-to-face and virtual.
That is correct.
Okay, where do we come up with the number 79 and 27? I mean, is it 27 that's willing to do evenings and weekends?
28 who said they were willing to do that only. They didn't want to do anything else but evenings and weekends.
How many was that now?
That was 28.
28. Okay.
And then of those who just wanted to teach like during the day, those students who were face-to-face and those students who were virtual simultaneously,
Yes.
that was 24.
24.
They didn't want to do the evenings and the weekends. And then there was another group who said, I'll do both the virtual and simultaneously those students who are face-to-face, but I also will do weekends. That's 27. And that was the that's how we got that 79 total.
Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you, man.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. James, I'll go back to my question now. I was going to ask about the 25 positions that we talked about the last time we met that would be outside teachers. Is there any update there? And I do have a part two, but I'll take that one first. Did we get an update as far as those who would be willing to teach only virtually that would be new teachers, those 25 new teachers?
So we did the 25 new teachers. We have, you'll see, I think 3 of those in the elections for recommendations for hire for tonight. And I think one that we're just waiting for some information to come back to say that they're ready to come to the board for approval.
And
So it was
okay,
4 total.
are we still actively trying to get to that number 25?
Yes, so as a part of the plan, Dr. Spencer can share more because we're already using some of those by teaching. Some of those teachers are doing something during their planning bail. And so that's why I set up to like equivalent of 25 positions because some of them are getting paid a quarter of their daily rate for teaching during their planning.
Okay. And then this number 80, the 79 teachers that we're talking about now, these are teachers that are currently in our system who are agreeing to do, I guess, the hybrid, the virtual learning plus the face-to-face.
That is correct.
And they are accepting. Like I said, that was a question that we had as a board was, did the teachers feel that there was, I guess, a group of teachers who didn't want to do that, the ones who are agreeing to do that?
So during that early in the month when I asked you if it would be okay if we did use teachers And when I presented it, it was like, because we have some students who are quarantined, and we, needed to have some people to give them instruction while they were gone. That's why I said if we could do it with an application, and if it was an application, those would be the ones who said, yes, I'm willing to do it. And that's the survey that I sent out to, to our staff to see who would be willing to do it.
Great, thank you.
Any questions? Any more questions?
I did have a question regarding virtual, but it may not be for you. Maybe for Dr. Spencer. And I'm just looking at, so we're looking at the teachers we discussed for the additional 25 for the new group of virtual learners. Then we have the current group of virtual learners that we discussed very early on. So how many teachers do we currently have in place? I thought I remember the last time that number was 39. I don't know where I got that number from, but I'm thinking the number was 39. My question is, how many virtual learners do we have right now that are already in place and being taught by certified teachers? So how many students do we have? And how many teachers do we have who are teaching those students? That those students are being taught by a certified teacher that's providing feedback to them on a daily basis. How many? Or is it all of them, or just how many?
Okay. So if I understand your question correctly.
So hold on, let me repeat my question then. Okay. So in the beginning of the school year, we discussed a virtual option for those students who needed that accommodation. So those were students who had a medical need, and our decision was to provide that virtual opportunity for them. And so my question is, how many students were in that virtual situation? Because at this time and at this point on September 20th, which is a special day, on September 20th, and at this time of the academic year, how many students did we have in this virtual setting that we needed to meet those needs? How many students and how many fully certified teachers are in place for teaching those students and the various levels?
So we had the medical documented students that began at the beginning of the school year. We have currently, and I will give you the numbers by grade level, there was 100 total students.
Did you say 100?
100, yes, ma'am. Now, this has fluctuated a little bit because we have had some students that have gone back to face-to-face, some that have remained. So this is accurate as of today. We have 8 in kindergarten,
Sorry, say that.
8 in kindergarten, 5 in first grade, 12 in second grade, 7 in third grade. Yes. 6 in fourth grade, 5 in fifth grade, 7 in sixth grade, 3 in seventh grade, 9 in eighth grade, 13 in ninth grade, 10 in 10th grade, 11 in 11th grade, and 4 in 12th grade. Now, the second part of your question was how many are being taught by certified staff? So 6th, 7th, 8th are being taught by certified teachers of record at Elizabeth City Middle School. They are taking 25% of their pay in order for them to be teaching those students because they are doing it outside of their classroom. Ninth,
Those are the teachers who chose to do both, to teach face-to-face and virtual. So that's part of that group. is that what
Correct.
you're saying?
Mhm.
Okay. And that's for 6th, 7th, and 8th?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th are being taught by certified teachers as well. And those are from early college.
Okay, so can you tell me how many? So you said 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. How many teachers? 3 teachers? Is it 1 per grade level based on the number of students? So for example, you said
So at the middle school level, we have 3 teachers of record for ELA, math, and science. They are utilizing courseware through Edgenuity and providing class, like in meetings, if you will, to touch base with those students. Additionally, so they have 2 classes, say on Monday, where they would meet with an ELA and a math follow-up. They also have social and emotional learning being facilitated through Mr. Jones, who is is someone who is providing that for them. They also have other meetings, if you will, but they're getting coursework through Edgenuity. And the same is also being offered for our high school students.
For whom?
Yes, ma'am.
I said for whom, I didn't hear the second grouping. I did not hear who the second grouping was.
Oh, the second group is done by Jennifer Darnell and Liz Wooten. They are at the early college and they are dual certified and they are serving those students in ELA, math, and history and science.
so. Just for clarification, because it's been a lot of questions about a lot
Absolutely.
of concerns for parents. So that's
Mhm.
why I'm asking, because this gives you the opportunity to share it with them.
Absolutely.
So for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, for example, you said you have 3 teachers, right? For
Mhm.
science, language arts, and math. Is that what you're saying?
In social studies.
Okay, so you said they touch bases with them. Does that mean they have ongoing sessions with these teachers? Explain touch bases with them.
Okay, so they have office hours with those students. And so, for instance, your ELA teacher has those office hours with the students. They are monitoring their progress. They have certain amounts of work that they need to have accomplished, if you will. And then they have, like I said, that follow up for that one-on-one if they need it, or if it's in a group.
Right. So
So-
they're not meeting with them daily. It's just kind of like every other day or
Right,
every
it's on a
2 days.
schedule.
So it's kind of like self-learning.
Yes, it's more of a self-paced modules, if you will. So the courseware has guided notes, they have videos, instructional videos, and then they have assignments that they can do. And then in addition to that, there are quizzes and assessments. And then on top of that, then they meet with those teachers of record to get the additional support that they would need in the event that they don't understand something. For example, in the event that a student doesn't do well in a quiz, I did talk to, and I know Principal Moore is on, but one of her teachers was saying, okay, so this student is stuck. So that's one of those times where then they would set up that time with the students to say, okay, here is a group of students who need additional support on this content. And so then they provide that support.
So basically, the virtual is more like independent, and then you just follow up and monitor their success.
Yeah,
And in your opinion, you think this is going very well?
The parent, I talked to a parent actually for one of the medically documented parents on Friday, I believe it was Friday evening, and they said that this did work for them. They said that it was, they felt that it was good. They had some appointments and things that needed to be done because, again, remember we have medically documented students. And so they said that flexibility of being able to take that coursework and be able to do it independently and then also have those meeting times with the teachers was very helpful. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. So you can
Absolutely.
continue. I wanted to know
Okay,
about how many
no.
teachers. I'm sorry. I
No,
just
and they're
wanted
good.
to-
They're good
I'm
questions.
just trying to put it all together because we're saying virtual, but they're really working independently, it seems. So we're kind of checking in with the students.
Well, they're having virtual meetings, if you will. So they do have
once a week, I think we said, or if they need to speak with a certified teacher.
right. So they're having more than once a week. They meet with like the ELA teacher. It might be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then they might meet with the math teacher Monday, Wednesday, Friday as well. And then Tuesday, Thursday, it might be the social studies and science teacher. So those are regular scheduled meetings. Students are required to go to those.
And the parents are, of course, aware of these schedules. So
Yes, ma'am.
when they sign up for virtual, they know how it's being offered. And it's
Yes.
not a group of students with a teacher every day. They know
Right.
that.
And we did have.
I'm sorry.
We did have.
I'm sorry, who was asking, I'm sorry, who was asking the question? I couldn't hear her at all. Whoever asked the question, I'm sorry. Sorry to cut you off. But I couldn't hear whoever asked you that question.
So I need to repeat the question. I asked whether or not when parents signed up for virtual learning, they understood that this was the concept that would be used, that the children were not actually every day for every period of the day meeting with the teacher. They knew that it would be in groups for 2 or 3 days a week.
Right.
each
So,
week.
so they're meeting with teachers every single day, but they're not meeting every single day with every single teacher. So there was in the board approved documents, one of the things that we did have you all approve was the fact that they could use the Edgenuity software to be able to ensure that the students got the instruction in the event that we couldn't hire teachers, because we can cast a net out and ask for those teachers and advertise and do a great job of advertising. But in the event that those teachers were not available, then we did have the option to be able to provide that. For the elementary, it's a little bit different. We did cast that net out, and we have been able to, as Ms. James Davis referenced, 4 teachers, 3 for approval this evening and 1 hopefully on Monday. They have been without a certified teacher to have meetings, if you will, but they have been provided assignments, instructional videos, attendance. They have PE and music as well with a certified teacher. And
I don't mean to interrupt. Who has been providing that for those students?
so some of the teachers at the school have provided packets, as well as the district curriculum and instruction team have taken apart every single content area, and they have provided assignments for those students along with the videos and things. And then the parents did receive information where they were to upload those assignments into an email for Office of Curriculum and Instruction, and then we provided feedback on those.
Who is we, the teachers, provided the feedback?
The district curriculum and instruction team. So I was also providing feedback on those assignments until we could get teachers hired. And we have those teachers.
So I guess my question, and I'm sorry to have so many questions, but
No,
it
it's
helps
good.
it helps me to clarify just the questions and comments that we're receiving.
Absolutely.
And so I guess I'm hearing now that at the beginning, when we first launched this virtual, based on needs, based on our students, of course, we didn't have the numbers. And I think we as a board kept asking that question, were we prepared for this and if we had the numbers? And we did not. So you're saying that you all had been provided some feedback to parents. And now based on this additional 25, which I'm thinking that would be for these additional students coming in, now we're having to use some of these students for the first group because we never met those numbers from the beginning. Is that what we're saying?
Okay, so originally in the funding that we had allotted for 10 positions. When we could not find the teachers to fill those positions, what we did is we asked those teachers who would be willing to provide support for those students who did need to have virtual based off of medical documentation because we wanted all of the students to be safe and learning at the same time. And so that's where we solicited those teachers at the early college and at ECMS. Those positions, every 4 teachers takes 1 teaching position because you're paying 25%, if you will. And so to date, we have utilized, for instance, and we also have EC support as well. So we have 3 EC teachers who are getting that 25%. We have allotted for 1 at the high school level specifically to support OCS students. We have 3 at the middle school, 2 at the high school, and then we have 2 elementary where they are providing the music and the PE because we wanted to ensure that they had some electives as well. So then when you add those up, 11, and then you take 25%, that would give 2.75 positions of the 10 that we originally had. When you all voted, I believe you voted for 25 positions, correct?
Right. I think
Mhm.
that's what you all presented.
Correct. So with the hiring of the 4 new elementary teachers, that takes a total of 6.75 positions. So does that answer your question as far as the teachers?
Yeah, yes, if that's as you can, yes. I don't think he can hear you. You're not talking in your mic.
He's having a hard time hearing anybody, I think.
Mr. Spence.
Yes, sir. I can hear you,
This is
but I
Pam.
can't hear anything from Pam and whoever else was in the back talking. I couldn't hear him.
Did you have any additional questions from Dr. Spencer?
No, sir.
Dr. Spencer, I had one additional question as a follow-up. And I don't know if we were completed or not, but I did want to ask, with the applications that went out for the parents who opted to have their students go virtual, we talked about this last meeting as well. Was there an update on the number of students who said they wanted to come virtually?
For the medically documented or for this new extended
The
virtual
new
option?
extended.
The what?
The new extended, yes.
Okay, yes, that's the next part of this
Oh,
presentation.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
This time.
So I'm going to go ahead and continue on with the second part of the presentation, which is the extended virtual instruction program. So good evening, Board Chair Warden, Vice Chair and Committee Chair Pereza, Interim Superintendent Dr. Ingram, board members and colleagues. My apologies for not saying that when I first came up. I come before you to present information for the extended virtual instruction program that was offered for the board request. And so at our meeting, we presented and you voted to open the virtual option for students who did not have medical documentation. And so a survey went out and it was open until September 10th at 3 p.m. And when we presented having that option, we were unsure as to what that would potentially look like because we didn't know how many students would apply. And we also simultaneously, Human Resources and Ms. James Davis just presented the survey that was sent out to staff members. So we had two things going on. We asked teachers if they were wanting to do the simultaneous hybrid, which is teaching face-to-face and on the computer at the same time. And then wanted to know who would do after hours, as Dr. Williams had suggested, or even on a Saturday. In addition to that, we also had the posting so that anybody that wanted to apply to just be a virtual teacher, that we could do that. So Ms. James Davis gave you the numbers of how many actually said that they wanted to be able to teach simultaneous or concurrent sessions, which I have here is 52. And then you also have the numbers of those who would be willing to do the evenings and weekends. She said that there were 79 actual answers or responses to the survey, and we have approximately 450 teachers. So just wanted to give those numbers. In addition to that, we took the data immediately because you can't really start planning. So we started looking at all of the students and the numbers. And if you look before you, and Mr. Spence, I did send to you a copy of this. Okay, good. If you look on page 7 of the virtual instruction plan, it actually has the number of students and it's broken down. So you can see how many students we actually have that have applied for virtual. I'll give you a minute to look at that. And one of the things that was very perplexing and difficult to plan for was that the teachers that said that they would be willing to do that, it didn't align neatly, if you will. And so where you might have, and the students didn't either. So for example, Mr. Walton could be a kindergarten teacher, and he might only have one student in his class that wanted to be virtual. Ms. Pereza would also be a kindergarten teacher, and she might have 2, and then that would be the total amount for the entire school. So when you look at trying to arrange students, if you will, how do you do that across the district? And when you look and there's only 54 students at the kindergarten across 7 schools, most of that is 1 or 2, potentially 3 in each class, and some had none. So what we did is we looked at the numbers, and I'll tell you all the things that were considered, and then I'll tell you what we are presenting. We looked at the schools, we looked at the grade levels, we looked at the number of teachers when we received the information from the survey. We also have to look at class size regulations because at kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, you can only have a maximum number of students in the class. We also looked at the content area. We looked at high school courses and what that could potentially look like for the students and what could be offered and what could not be offered based on a virtual option. And in the event that we had to do something with Edgenuity and what that would look like. We also looked at the stress level of teachers interacting with students using dual platforms simultaneously. What does that mean? Teaching the computer and teaching in person at the same time. And the results of that survey pretty clearly indicated that there weren't a lot of teachers that wanted to do that. And so the one thing that we determined is that we need to have a good understanding of what hybrid learning is. And we need to have a common definition. And so hybrid can be defined basically as someone teaching 2 groups of students. You have those students who are with you in a brick and mortar, and if you look This is on page 4. And there's a reason why I'm defining it. So hybrid is a teacher teaching 2 groups, ones that are face-to-face and ones that are virtual. And you can do that in 2 ways. You can do it simultaneously and concurrently at the same time, or you can do it in a cohort model. And what we have seen is the virtual pilot that we presented to you all, where we would have a group of students at the middle school, say 6th grade, that would be virtual all day, but they would go from class to class virtually. I would teach a class all virtual, and then the rest of my students would be face-to-face for the rest of the day. So that's hybrid, but in a cohort model. Hybrid simultaneously is what we did last year. So what we want to do and what we suggest based off of everything and trying to keep, as Dr. Williams mentioned at the last meeting, and it's very well taken, students are already established in classrooms. To change students, and a lot of students, and move them to other classes, that could be disruptive. What we thought would be a good solution, not, it would be the best solution currently, is we have teachers that are willing to work after hours. And we don't want to tax our teachers with teaching at the same time. But what we can do is provide an opportunity for our teachers to have a live link. Almost like a live stream, if you will, but not a live stream necessarily. It could be a Google Meeting link where you are live, the teacher, and the students are there, but they're not interacting with the teacher at that time. So that way we're not attending to 2 at the same time. Much like whenever we're live streaming the board meeting, we have an audience that is out there, but we don't really interact with them at that moment. We also talked about having an interactive document where the students face-to-face and virtually could type a question for the teacher at that time in real time. That could be addressed easily. It could be open and you can see what the questions are at that time and you could answer it, or you could answer it in writing after the fact, which would provide answers to questions that student had. So we felt that this would also be a way to accommodate those students who are quarantined, because regardless of our students that may have a teacher that has 1 student that's virtual, you may have 7 that are also quarantined. So in order to ensure that everybody's getting live instruction, if you will, they would be able to log on to a live link, see and hear the direct instruction, then have their asynchronous assignments, if you will. The teacher would still be responsible for grading and doing all of that as if they were in the class. However, the caveat to all of this would be, we still have those teachers that said that they would be willing to support after hours. And so what we suggest is hiring some of those teachers. When we look at the numbers, we could hire 2, potentially 3 at each grade level at the elementary, depending on the number of students that are virtual. And they can have hours after school and be able to provide follow-up instruction, answers to questions as well. So it's like a double dose, if you will, but they're going to have that direct instruction for 30 minutes for that whole group, if you will, be able to log off, work on assignments, and then after school, they would have that connection with a teacher that's face-to-face. And that would not in any way have teachers attending to both. You would not have to disrupt a high school class, if you will, as far as a lot of the classes for that live link. So you would not necessarily have to reorganize and restructure and have students that potentially would have to not be able to take an elective class, if you will. Not all classes are conducive to that. but some of them would be, and we would preserve those classes for those for those students. And that is what our suggestion is, based off of the fact that we do not have those teachers that have been applying, and for the sheer number of students that we have in order to be able to provide that instruction for them. That would be difficult. It's not asking teachers to simultaneously teach or teach both at the same time. You would just listen to that live instruction. You would be able to then write your questions, have that interactive document, still be able to do that. And this might provide some anonymity too. Oftentimes, our students maybe are afraid to ask a question, but if you have the opportunity to be able to write that down and be able to get that response, that might help. And then additionally, being able to have that support after hours by that certified teacher, almost a co-teacher, if you will. That is what we are recommending based off of the number that we have. The students would then still be at their same school with the same teacher. In the event that they don't attend or they need to return, they would return back to the same teacher as opposed to coming back to a different teacher. It would also help with class sizes and not overloading and then having to worry about that as well.
So you're saying that if I am a teacher,
I can hear her.
so can you hear me now, Daniel?
Yes, yes, I can hear
I
you.
took Rodney's microphone. So, okay, let me see if I can remember my question. So if I'm a teacher, and we're referring to teachers who have said they are willing to teach after hours or during their planning period, what if I'm a teacher who isn't, but I have kids on my live link who are asking questions and those questions need to be addressed? That's disruptive to the classroom. You're saying that I have to go back after class. I would have to go back after class and answer those questions. Again, I'm a teacher who is saying I can't teach after hours. I can't teach after school. I can't teach at night or on the weekends. I have little kids at home, or I work another job, or I for whatever reason. Where are those virtual kids? Are they going to be assigned to another teacher? I'm confused as to how that's going to work.
Okay, so basically, I didn't want to put this back and create feedback. Basically, everybody would have a live link, but you're giving the whole group instruction. So in the event that you had a question, you could communicate that on this interactive document. That's live. And so you could do that with your face-to-face students and your virtual students. And remember, our teachers have potentially one, and I think that the most was 5. I don't know if we had any more than 5. Last year, we had more students that were virtual than we did face-to-face. So potentially, I could have one student that's virtual that might have a question or two. They would have the opportunity to be able to do that. And there's a variety of ways that it can be answered. You could have students answer the questions. You could have the students and the teacher, type those answers up as a response. And when we write about what we're learning, that's also a way that we can enhance our learning. And then the teacher could preview that as well. It could be utilized in planning with teachers. If they have similar questions, that's something where you can look at it and say, hey, all of our kids are having similar questions on this. How can we address this? And do we need to reteach something? There's ways to be able to do it without stressing them out.
So if they needed help after school or after hours, they would only have access to a teacher who is willing to provide that support. So they would have a contact, say, if they were in my class and I'm unable to teach after school or after hours, I'm a 4th grade teacher. There is a 4th grade contact that's somewhere in the district.
Right. A 4th grade certified teacher would be hired. So when Ms. James Davis gave you the numbers, there are enough teachers at the elementary and the high school to be able to do that. And so when you look, and we have some at the middle school as well, what that would look like would literally be a certified kindergarten teacher answering questions about the kindergarten instruction. The standards are all aligned with the pacing guides. And so we do have that pacing, and they're certified in that area. So they're all teaching pretty much the same thing. There could be some differences as to where they are. You know, it might be off a little bit, but you still have the understanding because you are a teacher in that context.
So I understand the live link, but as a teacher, if I didn't say that I would be someone who would be willing to teach any type of hybrid approach, and I'm, say, the teacher who has 5, will those kids be reassigned to another teacher?
We could have done a little bit of that, but when you start looking at the number of teachers that were willing and the number that were not, and then you start looking at pulling them out of the school where they are and putting them with a teacher that would, and then you start looking at the numbers that would be in that classroom, and then you think of class sizes and everything, the best way to be able to do that was to have that live link where they're not having to simultaneously teach, but literally it's like a live stream, pretty much, that we're doing. And then have the opportunity to be able to ask questions.
I guess I can see this for older grades. I'm having a hard time understanding my kindergartner
Sure. So they would
on
get
a live link.
they would get to see the instruction, do it, but then after hours, you would still have, so for instance, if we had 20 students and I was that teacher, for 2 hours every day, I would meet with my group. That's what my 25% would be. And I would be able to provide instruction again, if you will, on ELA and math and that content. It's not perfect, but we are a small district with small numbers at every grade level. And to try to rearrange, you would be moving teachers or students to other schools with other teachers.
I guess my question is really, is it realistic to do this for K-5? I mean, I can see middle school and high school, but I think that we decided to provide a virtual option, but if it's not realistic and we're not able to do it, then we shouldn't do it. I mean, I understand the option of virtual, but, and that may be something, I mean, I think that we want so badly to provide that option, but if we can't, we can't at this point. So
Well, I would offer a couple things. And I understand, and certainly, was it page 7 with the numbers, I guess? I understand your concern and your wish. But is the board, and I'm looking at, I was an English major, so we're telling kids, let's see, we have 54 in kindergarten, 38, 48, 42, 51, 38. That's 271 kids, kindergarten through 5th grade, that we have an alternative way of doing it when we gave them the option. It might not be the perfect way, but it's probably one of the best ways that we can without planning in September as opposed to planning in March and April for September. If I can be honest, I think it would work for those who want to do this. You may find people that say, you know what, this doesn't work for me. I think my kid can go to school and they send them back. I think that could happen. When we talked to Virtual Academy people across the district that had Virtual Academy, they asked for a semester-long commitment like we would. But at the end of the day, my experience last year, understandable, different state, but still school, I had principals come to me, as not principals here, but principals in a different state, say, how can I look at a kid and tell them they got to wait till the midterm to come back to school? If they want to come back to school, we're going to let them back in school and put them back in that classroom. Or if we would reverse that, if you decided to reverse that decision, then we've got 271 people that we told could have it. We're offering a way to do it, not ideal, but this is a way to do it. I would recommend letting the parents try this, and if it's not sufficient for what they would want to do, then we offer to let them come back, as opposed to just saying maybe we shouldn't do it. I'm not trying to make it messier for Dr. Spencer. If I show up murdered tomorrow morning, have her questioned, but I think that's probably a little more practical from where I sit. I mean, if I were sitting where you are, if I were a board member instead of a superintendent, I don't get a vote, but I would say, well, you know, we do want to offer this, and this is what staff can reasonably do with the time constraints of putting it together, the time constraints of being able to hire people. You're very generous as a board with allowing us the positions, but there's a reality of getting folks hired and ready and trained and scheduling and all of that. So we try to mitigate the best we can with principals sending home work packets, things like this, to get things rolling until we can get these folks together. And I would agree, very young children, they need the social interaction. They need I mean, my own granddaughter was virtual all year last year, and there were some sketchy pieces. I'm not excoriating the educators. They had their her grandma there with her to oversee her and her best friend, and they were. It was a chore. It was a chore. It wasn't perfect, but the parents, my son-in-law and stepdaughter, decided that they preferred the virtual, and they never did send her back towards the end of the year when they were letting kids back. That was just a personal decision they made. That they said, well, it's not perfect, but it's working well enough. So I would recommend that we try this and do what we can. And if some of the parents say, I really, this isn't working for me, so well, you can always come back to school. We would. I know Dr. Spencer's not going to say she'd kill me in front of all of you, but she might later. But that's something that you might want to consider. Dr. Spencer, is there anything else you can add with the support? Because I get what Ms. Perez is saying. And I don't disagree with it.
And I don't either.
But,
I think the other piece too that just kind of helps with this is we have this virtual option, but I think what we need to remember too is we also have students that are being quarantined. And you have, when they get quarantined and they're out for 14 days, and I can say this because my granddaughter, who is not in our county, was quarantined at kindergarten. And so what she received was a packet, and that was pretty much it. And so I say all of that to say, had she been at least able to see the students or see the teacher, not even the students, it's about seeing that instruction and still being able to have at least a live link. And it's not stressful because I can say right now, there could be 5,000 people watching right now, and they're all probably eating popcorn and saying, and maybe being critical, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I don't really see them right now to have to worry about that. However, there would have been that live instruction, so the student isn't out for 14 days and not getting it.
Who will manage the connectivity issues and I'm at home with my kid
Hmm.
and I can't get on. I really need my kid on this live, 'cause they're getting ready to do math, and it's a live link, and the teacher's not monitoring that because it's just a link, and if you can get on, you can get on. Who will they contact? The principal? Will they have a tech contact at school so that they can? I mean, because that would be something. That would be something that the teacher would also have to manage.
Sure.
So,
And I think that was part of the stress too, to be honest with you. If I was a teacher trying to do both platforms, I could see where that would be stressful. I know that Principal Moore and I have had some conversations, as with Ms. Godfrey, as to at the middle school, having some students be able to provide some support to build their capacity. And if you think about that opportunity to align that with job, or a career, but being able to have that. But Ms. Godfrey, I asked her to come as well tonight to be able to answer some questions. So
Good evening. So that's one of the things that we're making sure that we're going to be able to provide support for is our students that are going to be at home. So one of the things that we learned from when we went virtual in March of last year was some of the things that worked and some of the things that didn't. So what we are planning to do is to make sure we have those supports in place, not only at the school level, but also at the district level. One of the things that we'll make sure that we have available, and we've already gotten most of these guides together, of course, how-tos, videos, PDFs. Dr. Spencer and I are also planning a web event for parents of virtual students so that we can go ahead and start answering those questions and walking them through login issues and who to reach out to and where they can get that information easily. So to make sure that we have those questions answered ahead of time instead of trying to fight it on the back end. So that's something that we're working through. As far as getting that planned now, we're working on updating our website. It's almost ready to go live with all that information as well for our virtual parents to be able to go to. We're creating a virtual learning guidebook that has a lot of that information in it as well as some of the things that all the things that Dr. Spencer has put together for our parents and our students and our teachers. So we're trying to make sure that we're front loading as much as we can, and then making sure that we have support available to meet any of the needs that we need, currently.
because I think my question comes, is it's centered around the fact that we want it to be as least stressful for our teachers as possible. So if I'm teaching and then I get interrupted, hey, I can't log on. I can't, I'm getting an email. I can't log on. I'm not going to be checking my email. I'm teaching. My child is, say, home with someone. I'm at work and my child is at home with someone who's not tech savvy to problem solve. Who are they going to that's a question I have. Who are they going to contact when the live stream doesn't work? Is it going to be recorded so I can watch it later? If I couldn't log on live, will it be recorded so that I can watch it again? But then again, is that something else? Is the teacher going to have to hit record and make sure that they stop it? And how does that work? So those are just some concerns I have about that.
So one of the reasons why we wanted to have that after-school support and hire those teachers was in the event that something happened, right? So you will actually be getting instruction twice. You would get it live, and then if there were questions or anything that happened, then you have that after-school support as well. So while not perfect, like we said, it would be a way to accommodate those people that would want that, but you would literally have a certified teacher that would be able to be there to help with that support, to help maybe with those progress monitoring assessments at the elementary level for M-Class, and using data and being able to just answer those questions for parents. And to be honest, maybe some of our elementary parents are working, and so they might have the questions after hours anyway. So this would provide another opportunity in the event that they were home with their child afterwards and they could get that additional support.
And how will they get the live stream? Will that be emailed to the class only?
So what we wanted to do was have in Canvas a schedule. So the teachers would just create a one-page schedule that would have the times when they would have like, say 9 to 10:30, Dr. Spencer has ELA class. And so from 9 to 9:30 would be the live link for that whole group instruction. If I'm a lower grade, it might be that phonics instruction is happening at this time. And typically teachers, at least when I taught first grade, whenever I did phonics, I literally had cards and different things that I would use, but you stood in front of the class so that they would be able to see you and see the cards. I could just stand in front of a camera and do the exact same thing, and they would get that live instruction, be able to repeat it back and things like that. I just wouldn't hear them.
I can't believe that I didn't think to ask this before. But when I used to flip classrooms, and I would record myself for a substitute, maybe I would do that later in my teaching career, and then make it available, except back then we didn't have the fancy smanchy technology. I had to kind of have it on a VHS tape and let a kid take it home and pop it in and look at it. So a kid who's not virtual, could that kid access the after-school help, additional help? Uh-oh, I'm meddling now. I know.
I think what we need to be able to do is look at our funding, but we have teachers that have opted to do that. And so we also have Title I funds, where we were looking for tutors, if you will, for after school. And oftentimes, that came later, but this could very easily be something that is written into every school's plan if they would like to do that and use funding in a different creative way and have it be very targeted and intentional.
Well,
So you could
I just see an
potentially do
I
that.
just see
Yes.
an opportunity there,
Mhm.
that it
There's-
could help out kids that are going to school during the regular day and
That are absent.
absent, and parents want to, or come home and the parent wants to see what's going on in the classroom, and the parent can,
And we need to be mindful that the questions wouldn't be directed perhaps at like how the teacher taught something, because a teacher might teach something differently. We're not robots. We are human beings, and we bring to the instruction a little piece of ourselves. But the questions would then become about the content and about what it is that the students were actually getting. And so being mindful of that as parents, and being able to say, I might teach it one way. Another teacher might teach it a different way. And sometimes we need to hear it in a different way.
Being my question about would the live links be sent to only students and parents within that class?
So it would be posted.
secure.
It would be posted in their Canvas account, which would be secure, I guess.
I wanted to ask, just so I'll make sure here. I understand the important thing is the student, and I understand that. But if you had to instruct me in something and you didn't want to, you wouldn't be healthy and I wouldn't be healthy. I could read that. So I guess what I'm asking, when in the beginning, when we were talking about this, that we weren't going to add extra work to our teachers. And I even asked in the last meeting, I said, what if worst comes to worst? And I was told, we'll work on that. It's just not going to happen. So all this extra stuff is going to be out of these 79 teachers that we had, or are we going to make teachers do extra?
So the only thing the teachers would technically, the classroom teachers would do is have a live link open. So it's like live streaming our board meeting, or live streaming, not asking you to attend to this. And no, it's not perfect, and it hurts. I mean, when I sit up here and I'm thinking about the stress level of teachers, I don't want to add to that. But I can also say that it hurts whenever you think about a student that's quarantined and they're out of my class for 14 days. And what am I going to do? If all of our assignments are in Canvas and I have at least a live link, everybody, including the quarantine students, could at least see some live instruction, and they would still have those assignments, and they would at least be kind of together, if you will, instead of them coming back after quarantine and trying to figure out where they were and then trying to catch them up on the side. And then that would cause additional stress. And I could be out 14 days and you could be out 14 days, but your 14 days aren't the same as my 14 days. And then when we come back, we would all be at different places. And I think that also is creating a lot of stress. And so this would be a way perhaps to mitigate that a little bit.
See, that's what I'm saying though. Teacher will be there, and yes, I understand the virtual concept, but they're going to be responsible for that also.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's what causes stress.
Right.
I'm not only responsible for this right here, but now I'm going to be responsible for this out here. And that was the thing that I did. I felt as a board member when I said, we're not going to add on this to the teacher. But I figured that's why I asked. If worst comes to worst, what are we going to do? Because
And I think that.
and that's where we're at now. And I'm just asking, is there going to be any compensation? Is there going to be anything that can be done to help our teachers? You know, they did it last year, and that's basically what they're going to do again.
And I understand what you're saying, I really do. But this pandemic has put stress on everybody. Because I'm sure if you talk to the children or the parents, they would be talking also about the stress it's putting on them and their children when they're falling behind. So I think most teachers understand, and I would like to see additional compensation, but they understand that this is something with which we are all dealing. And therefore, we're going to have to do what we have to do. I don't want more stress either, but the whole situation calls for stress, and we have to try to rise to the occasion.
And I
I
think.
understand that, but if I could address
Oh,
Ms.
absolutely.
Houston, what she had there, we've had teachers leave over the way things were handled. We have teachers that are discouraged. I mean, I just do not think, after we were so adamant that we would not go this direction, we're going there. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to vote against it. I just want it known that as far as my part as a board member, I felt, I didn't want to add this on there. And like I said, I know the kids are the bottom. I love students, but I still, and I will always believe that if we don't have a healthy educator, the kids are going to feel that, and it will trickle on down. And I feel that. Well, that's just the way I feel. But I mean, like you said, I guess we're going to have to do what we got to do,
And I think.
because the teachers have to be taught. I mean, the students have to be taught.
And I think it would eliminate some of that stress, just in the sense that you're not attending to the student on the screen at that time. Because right now, I'm sure there are people out in the community that maybe have questions about this, right? Now, if I had a live document where they could write the questions, I could literally be seeing that right here, and that could guide my instruction, just like it would other, but I'm not attending to them at the same time. It's not a great compromise, because I do know how stressful it was, and I am one of those people that did not want that to be either. But I think if it's a live link and not interactive, if you will, at that time. And additionally, I'm not going to sit and say, okay, class, you're all out here, and now I'm going to do a small group with my virtual students. I might have one student. But after school, when we hire that other teacher, that's when some of that other support would happen. And the part that would be helpful, I think, for that classroom teacher is they would communicate. So if Mr. Walton was one of the teachers that would be supporting my class, I could definitely let him know what some of those things were and what some of the concerns were. And that would be data he would use to be able to help his instruction for small group, but I'm not having to do that at the same time that I have face-to-face students here.
So I'm not trying to monitor it. It's not perfect. It's not, but it is less stressful. And it does provide a little bit of that whole group live instruction for those students who are absent, because I'm going to tell you, the teachers are still accountable for those students who were quarantined. And I could come back after being quarantined and I could go right back into quarantine again, and then I could miss a whole month of instruction. And so at least I would have a live link, if you will, and that would go with the instructional packets.
Yes, ma'am, I understand, we gotta do what we got.
But it's not ideal, and I hear you.
It's not, but it is, I mean, the teachers themselves are even offering options by some of them agreeing to do this. And I think they would be very appreciative of the live stream and particularly that extra help after school. I know I would have appreciated that.
And we're not asking them to stay after school and do it without compensation. And what we really need to be mindful of, and I think conscientious of, is what Ms. Houston said. Everybody is stressed. And what we need to make sure that we're doing is that we're compensating people for the work that they are doing. And so when we're asking them to go above and beyond and do that extra, that 25% would take care of those 2 hours after school, that we're not just saying it's an expectation that you do this. And give that opportunity to those teachers that did say that they would do that.
And to clarify, Mr. Archuleta, the difference, what we're asking, I believe, is the difference from last year to this year is that this year will just be a live stream and they're not being required to respond to students who are logged in virtually like we were last year. So I can't say, hey, I have a question and interrupt the class. And I don't have to answer the question that a student is asking, or, hey, so-and-so, turn your camera on. Hey, so-and-so, put a shirt on. Hey, so-and-so, mute your.
But the teacher's still gonna be responsible for them, correct?
For the students in their class,
Yeah,
yes.
as far as their grades go and everything.
But the good part about that is that when you look at it, there's not a lot of teachers that have a lot of students. So it's not like half their class is virtual and half is face-to-face, and where that struggle would be real. I can tell you that a lot of them maybe had 3. There were a handful that had 5. I think one had 6, but there's a lot of them that just had 1. And so, or 2.
Please believe me, the students come first, and I understand that. But I just
I
feel
understand.
that somebody that's instructing my child, if I still had a child in school, I'd want them to be happy. I want them to be, yeah, that's what I wanted.
I do
That's
too.
what I was thinking.
I do too. And I know that there's a lot of stress. I do.
Thank you.
Are we still allowing staff to decline a student for virtual based on prior lack of success in the virtual level? So if my child was unsuccessful virtually with virtual model last year, and where I didn't attend, or my child didn't attend, or they did not do well in virtual, are we still allowing our principals to decline a student for virtual?
I don't think we can in a case of a medical.
What about the non-medical?
Yeah. This is how I would say, I would certainly contact the parent and say, look, this was very unsuccessful last year. Just be gut level honest. We have serious doubts. But at the end of the day, if they don't bring the child to school, they don't bring the child to school. I'd rather have the child in school somehow than not at all. But I would say, I would very strongly recommend that that child come to school. Um, uh, I don't mean to sound so cavalier about it, but at the end of the day, you can't make anybody do anything. So if they don't bring them, you can say, no, you're, because I've had a parent tell me, well, they're not coming. I mean, I said, well, no, you got to come. Well, I'm not coming. I told a parent not too long ago, before we had the virtual option, this, well, the only options we have right now are face-to-face or medical exemptions, because at the time, that's what we had. And she looked right at me and said, they're not coming. I said, well, okay. So, I mean, I think that's the reality. I think you have to strongly encourage and cajole and say, we're really denying this. This is bad. This is not a good option because there was no success. You got to do something different. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting something different to happen. And what's going to make this different? You know, Ms. Ingram, what's it going to be different this time than last time? And you might get a myriad of stories, but I think at the end of the day, we have to do our best to convince the kids, convince our parents that we have their children's best interest at heart. We're not trying to punish them. So we can say deny, but at the end of the day, I don't know that, you know, well, we don't come. All right, so we kick you out of school. And then I'm thinking, gee, what good is that? You know, so it's a tough line, and we don't have too much of that. I don't think. I wouldn't believe, but I don't know how many. We do have some kids in this country, not just here, that have kind of gone ghost since the pandemic. We don't really know where they are. They might have moved. They might have. They might still be around town. I don't know, but I don't think we're ever really going to know that until the pandemic lifts and we try to recapture everybody. So that's a very good question. I don't know if I have a very good answer, but I've tried to be as honest and real as I can. Mr. Spence has a question.
So we are, I listened to a lot of this, a lot of the plans. One question is, have we received input from our principals and from our teachers on the way that we're structuring this virtual plan? Because it seems like some of the questions we're asking on behalf of our teachers, it seems like they would have asked certain questions that we don't even know to ask, or give input from a viewpoint that we don't even see. So we're making this decision for this virtual plan. Have we really discussed it with those who are on the front lines? I've asked that question several times when we discuss things, because I think it's very important. So I don't know, have we discussed it with our principals and staff? Or did we just make this decision from central office?
Right. So we reached out, in addition to some of the principals that we could get a hold of, when I received the information from the survey that HR had done as far as knowing the numbers. I did reach out to as many principals as I could in preparation of the board meeting this evening. And additionally, some teachers were asked as well. Not every teacher, no, sir. But we did get some teacher feedback. Some principals had some questions and came up with a frequently asked question list, if you will, of things that the teachers would ask. And oftentimes that is addressed by a why. But did we ask every single teacher? No. And did we?
No, No, I wouldn't dare expect you, I wouldn't think you would ask every single teacher. You said the principals that you can get in touch with. When do we reach out to these principals and staff? Do we do that just today before the meeting? Do we have enough time to even talk to them and present this plan to them and get their input on this plan? Or did we just present it to them today before the meeting?
Okay, so no, it wasn't today before the meeting. But as soon as we had the information from the survey, so we did that. I called the principals on Friday and addressed some questions with some, I had a principal that asked some teachers as well. But yeah, you have to understand that we've had the 10th, the survey was closed, and then cleaning all of the data to see how many of the students there actually were, to see what would be feasible, and then be able to have the opportunity to be able to have meetings with teachers and principals in less than a week prior to this meeting. So I
don't know
understand
if
your
it's
point.
possible, because just like our parents and our children are ready to get information about this virtual option. But I'm just wondering, is it possible? Because a lot of, I guess, so has any teachers or principals seen this virtual option that you're presenting to us tonight before, except for the ones on Friday to Friday?
No, because we planned literally within a week, because the survey closed on the 10th, and that was a Friday, and it was late in the afternoon, and then we started disaggregating the data, getting everything together, and then Friday was when we had something that was feasible to even present based off of the numbers that we had received from the teacher survey, which the team received, and then the students.
Okay, so when do we plan to roll this out?
That would be based off of, I would like to get input as well. I think that's important, and you bring up a very good point. I don't want to do anything hastily. And as Mr. Archuleta has said, that you want your teachers and everyone to not be stressed. And I think knowing the why and how that would also help support those students that are in quarantine, I think that would help. I think it goes back to what Dr. Ingram was also saying, though, that there are some parents that are refusing to send their children to school until this is available. So there's a lot of factors.
Okay, so again, not to put too much pressure, but there's a lot of people wondering, again, when are we planning to roll this out? So do we have any estimated date of planning to roll our virtual learning option out? Anybody can, I don't know. I'm not.
So with this, I would like to meet with principals tomorrow and discuss it, and then have the opportunity to be able to talk to teachers as well, because I think that we need to be very forthcoming before we would even communicate to parents when that timeline would be and what that would potentially look like. But that can be done, I would think, this week. And then that would be something that could be rolled out rather quickly, in the sense that you're keeping your same children. It's not like you're having to do a lot of extra work as far as changing schools, changing classes, and things like that. The high school would be a little bit different in the sense that some of those courses might not be able to be offered virtually.
Okay, looking at the agenda, it shows that we're talking about virtual instruction and curriculum plan information, correct? Is that where we are on the plan? So I'll make sure I'm not misspeaking. Yes? So beside that, it looks, in parentheses, it looks for approval for tonight. Is that for tonight? We're supposed to approve this plan?
The approval is for the document that you have, which is just a template that the state gave us, where we had to fill out, what it is potentially that we would be doing, and that has to be submitted to the state by October 1st.
So just for clarification, this is the plan for our virtual learning, correct?
Mhm. That is what the
Yes
state
or no?
requires based off of Session Law 2021-130. Yes, sir.
Got it. So if we're going to make a motion to vote on this tonight and not discuss it or not have our principals and teachers help give us some input on this, how can we really make a good conscious decision to vote on this if we haven't consulted with those who it really, really affects? I hear Mr. Archuleta loud and clear. I hear those who spoke Pam loud and clear. And we're asking questions from the board's point of view because we do hear from the teachers. We do hear from the parents. We hear from the community. But they're just getting presented with this information just like we are tonight. And for me, I should say, to make a good conscious decision or conscious vote, I really, really would love to hear their side. And then we can get a date so we can roll this thing out so we can have this option available.
I agree.
So it just seems like to me we're just not there. It just seems like to me we're still spinning our wheels. We're still in a position, although we do have a plan in place, but some of these answers and I've been rather quiet, some of these answers that the board has been asking, we haven't been able to get clear and concise answers tonight. And I'm just not comfortable with that decision. So that's why I asked a question about us voting on something that it just doesn't sound comfortable for me.
Right.
And
Well,
I just wanted to share that.
No, and I agree. And we can, I believe, have those meetings with the principals tomorrow, and then we could set up some meetings this week with the staff, the teachers, if you will, and have some opportunities for them to provide that feedback and then bring it back to the board next Monday with their feedback and anything that would be adjusted as far as the plan. I think that would be feasible.
Well, I don't want to make the decision for the board. This is Daniel talking. Because we voted, we approved all so far since school has started. And everything we voted or approved on, forgive me for this, but we come back and, we can't do that, or we can't move forward. And it's like, I don't know. This is just, it's frustrating for us to make a decision to vote, approve, and then we come back again. Okay, that one didn't work quite. This is just me talking, not the board. So I don't want to make that decision or even make that appeal to do that. It's just my view. Thank you. That's it.
Dr. Spence, let me ask you this question with regard to what Mr. Spence was saying. If we do buy time, let's say, for lack of a better expression, if we try to buy time for before October 1st, which would put us at Monday, is there enough time to take this home, not us, but take this home, have the principal teacher input, connect back with your office, and have some general update for the board before week's end so that we could be better informed for Monday for a decision?
Sure. So what I can do is type up just the nuts and bolts, not the whole 40-page document, because it's a template and you're checking boxes. But most definitely just the nuts and bolts of that live link, the support, absolutely. Have them complete a survey that can be tabulated very easily. We're meeting with principals tomorrow where we can explain that. Like I said, I have typed up some like talking points, if you will. That was a principal recommendation from one of the conversations that we had. And so definitely having that available for the teachers as well so they could see that and see the why behind, we didn't have teachers. We said we would have, we would hire teachers, but unfortunately we cast our net wide and we didn't get the number that we thought. And so giving them that why, I think, behind that, and also letting them see that the quarantine students would be served too, and then provide the opportunity for them to have an open-ended feedback. Absolutely. That would take, yeah, we can set that out potentially tomorrow. Mhm.
Can we have that specifically?
Thank you for that, Mr. Walton. That was good added to that.
Yeah, because
The-
I was looking that next Friday is the 1st. So it would be nice if we could have some information by the end of the week.
Yep.
Like by email or some kind of feedback.
So I have a question. This form, this 40-page document,
Hold on.
is this
Dan.
public information? I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. Ms. Pereza was in the middle of a question. Can
Oh,
you
I'm
hold your
sorry. I couldn't hear.
question?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So
All right.
I was looking at my calendar and next Friday is the 1st. So I agree with Mr. Walton that we would like that. It would be best if we could have some information by the end of the week. But I was going to ask if we could specifically have feedback from each level, like elementary, middle, and high school, because of, again, my concerns with how this will work at the elementary level, particularly the younger grades. Sorry, Daniel, you can go ahead.
Oh, no,
Okay,
that was good. I'm glad you asked that question because that's added input to it. The one other question I had was this 40-page document, Dr. Spencer, is this public information or is it just for us?
Well, I think anything that's shared at a board meeting becomes public information. I mean, it's nothing that's secretive, if you will. It's more just, the plan and the template that the state provided.
Got it. So my question is, is it possible that we can share this document, whether it's 40 pages or not, that leaves it up to them to want to read that whole 40 pages or not, just make that available to them, just like we have it available to us?
Absolutely.
I understand what you're saying about kind of condensing, so it makes it highlighting certain points in it.
Sure.
But yeah, just make it available if I was wondering.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Great suggestions.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Spencer regarding this plan? So I feel the general consensus is that we do not want to move on approval of this tonight. We want to get more information by the end of this week, hopefully, and revisit this on Monday night at our regular board meeting.
If I may say something, I think that would be fine, but I would ask the board for a decision one way or the other on Monday because we have to submit it by October 1 if we're going to do this.
So in essence, what we're going to do is we're going to move this to the consent agenda for Monday night's meeting with the understanding that we're going to get some additional information via email, correct? That will help us to make a better decision about moving forward with this plan. Okay.
Would this need to be a separate action item
Yes.
instead of being on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to have to wait on Mr. Archuleta before we can move on that, though, for right now. So if we want to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the testing update.
So I'm just saying that we're not taking action on this tonight, and
No.
we're not going to place it on the consent agenda. We will. What do I need to make a motion, Tammy, to not take action on this, or?
Right.
Basically tabling it.
Okay. Well, So from our committee, we would like to table this tonight and move this to an action
Right.
agenda for Monday night, a regular board meeting.
Exactly.
Okay? And then the next item is testing data update from Dr. Spencer and Ms. Nina Griffin.
There's a presentation that can be shared? Okay. And so this is the testing and accountability update that with the testing results that we received. I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Testing and Accountability, Ms. Nina Griffin, who has created the tables and charts. But I do want to caution everyone in this presentation, and this was recommended at the state level, that you don't really look at past years and compare it to this previous year's or the spring's testing, if you will, for various reasons. There's one gap year where there was no testing. Additionally, not all of the students were required to come in, strongly encouraged, but we could not require them to come in. And so there were students that did not come in for that testing. And so they caution everybody across the state in making those comparisons. So I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Testing and Accountability, Ms. Nina Griffin, and then we can answer any questions that you may have after.
Good evening, Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, distinguished board members, and interim Superintendent Dr. Ingram. I come before you this evening to present the official end of course and end of grade testing data for ECPPS. This year, we were able to participate in all state expected and required assessments. For the 2020-21 school year, the only waivers that school districts were approved of was for testing outside of the window, which closed July 5th, 2021, and that every school in these districts would maintain their 2018-2019 letter grade. So on this slide right here, what I'm doing first is just giving you an example of what proficiency levels mean. We have level 5, which is the highest that you can make on any of these state mandated tests. And that means that our students, of course, meet on grade level proficiency standards, and also they meet them for college and career and college readiness. Level 4, they also meet these standards for grade level proficiency, and they also meet them for college and career readiness. The difference between the level 4 and 5 is that our level 5 students are advanced. So level 3 is when they also meet on grade level standards, and then they are not, however, career and college ready. This year, you notice that we do not have levels 1 and 2. Those students are just considered not proficient. So those students do not meet grade level proficiency, or they don't also meet the college and career readiness. This right here is our trending data for 5 years. I thought about putting it in a bar graph, a line graph. However, with our data that was missing for the 2019-2020 school year, because we were exempt for those particular exams, it didn't calculate right, so I just put it in trend. So for this year for ECPPS, and remember, Dr. Spencer did say that NCDPI has suggested that we do not compare our data to our previous years. However, we do want to use it as a reflection piece so that we know how to move forward, depending on how this school year goes as well. So for this 2021 school year, we were at 28.7. And of course, for 2019-2020, we did not have any data. For the 2018-19 school year, we were at 47.2. 17-18, it was 46.4. And 2016-17, we were 44%. I do want to say that across the nation and also the state of North Carolina, that each district took significant drops due to being in the pandemic, virtual learning, and all types of things we had to adjust to that we are not normally used to. On this particular page, this one is a little bit smaller. However, these are the numbers of students who were expected to test in our elementary level, and I'll share this document with you all too, and I have it on my phone, so I'm gonna pull it up so I can see it.
Is there any way to make this full screen?
Ma'am?
I was asking if there's any way to make that full screen and, because it's the panel of,
Because this, you may want to see like the number of students who actually did come in, and we call it the number of tests. Because, you know, some students take multiple tests, and so we just do it as expected number of tests. And so while he's working on that, I'll go ahead and just talk to you about it real quickly. In elementary, our 3rd through 5th grade reading tests, we were expected to give 1,106 tests. Out of those, we had, for our reading tests, we had 1,027 tests administered, which was 92%. You know, we always want to try to get to 95%, but of course, with our students having I'm not going to say the option, they were required to come in, but parents, of course, made choices for them. Some of them did not come in to test. So 79 of those tests were not taken, which was 7.1%. For math, that same number was 1,106 students, and we had 1,021 students to come in to test in elementary school. And 85 of those tests were not taken. Again, we did not reach the 95% for math, and this is across all of our elementary schools together. And in science, we had a total of 336 students who were required to test. 305 of those students came in, which was at 90.7%, and 31 of those students did not come in, which was 9.2%. For our middle schools, our total number of students who were expected to test in reading for grades 6 through 8, we had 1,216. We ended up giving 1,083 tests, which was 89%. And 133 of those students did not come into test, which was 10.9%. For math, now in math, for 6th through 8th grade, we know that we have some 8th grade students who take math 1, so that's broken up. So that number is a little bit different. But we were expected to give 1,212 tests. We administered, and this is just regular 6th through 8th grade math, we administered 1,078 tests, which was 92.3%. 134 of those students did not test, which was 11%. For Math 1, we had 55 students for both middle schools, and we had 100% of those students who did come into test. So that was the only grade that we had 100%, course, I'm going to say course, that we had 100% tested. In 8th grade science, we had 423 students, and 372 of them came into test. 51 of them did not, which left us with 12% of students who did not test in science. In high school, we go by subjects and not necessarily grades. For Math 1, there was a total of 350 tests that were expected to be given. 284 students came in, which was 81.1%. 66 of those students did not test, which was 18.9%. For Math 3, and if you have heard in past data and math things, Math 3 counts towards our growth only when our students who took it in 8th grade for Math 1. Once they get to high school, it does not count towards your school's growth. So we had 224 students there, and 200 exactly took the test, which was 89.2%. 24 of those students did not come into test, which was 12%. For English 2, 392 students, 316 tests were administered, which was 80.6%. 76 students did not come in, which was 19.4%. And of course, for biology, we had 371 tested that were expected to be given, 314 were given, 84.6%. And we had 57 students who did not test, which was 15.4. And when we say high school, we know that we are also including our early college and our HL Tree students, their grades, their scores go back to their home schools. On this next slide, I broke it up. We have the 2021 elementary school level grade proficiency, and this is broken up by subject for this particular one. For grade 3, across the district, for reading, we had 28.1%. For grade 3 math, it was 23%. For grade 4, it is 38% in reading. For grade 4 math, we had 14.9% across the district. For grade 5, we had in reading our 28.5%, and for math, it was 19.1%. Across our district, with all 7 of our elementary schools, grade 5 science was at 37.0%. For middle school, across the district in our 6th grade reading, we were at 29.4% proficient. 6th grade math was 15.9. 7th grade reading was 31.6. 7th grade math at 19%. 8th grade reading was at 40.3%. 8th grade math was at 16.8. 8th grade science was 61%, and our math 1 students in middle school were at 58.6%. Right here, we have some cohort data. We still track our students regardless of years that are missed. If you can look at this chart, you just see how they are trending from 2016 up to 2021. And if you follow the colors, you can actually see how the cohorts go together. Of course, you know, once they go into high school, they don't go into cohorts anymore. And this is for our ELA data. It is trending down, but once again, this is a reflection piece for us. And we can go back to the drawing board and see what things we need to do to move forward. And the next one, this one is math. Again, the same particular thing. If you notice that red line in the middle, that simply just separates our elementary school from our middle school students. So if you follow the colors, you can see how the trends go down from different grades. And these are the same groups of students, whether they move out or whatever, or go to different places. This is still the same group of students based on the data that they provided this school year and years before.
But it doesn't take into account, or does it, the children that move?
Yeah,
Or
well,
it does? Because
go ahead.
our society is a lot more transient than we think it is. So I used not to question these kinds of things, but I do now. Give you an example. I had a small elementary school in rural Franklin County, North Carolina, and you would have thought that no one ever left that school. I mean, families had gone to that school for generations, but yet in the 5th grade, the principal told me that less than 50% of that 5th grade had been at Edward Best Elementary School from kindergarten through 5th grade. So there's transients across the country. And I don't think that these data in general take that into account, do they? No, I didn't think so. And it's nothing against you, Nina.
No, sir.
I mean, but you know what I think of these things. But I'll hold my tongue because I know it's public.
Yes,
It's real important.
But you are absolutely correct. You know, like you just said, it is a transient. We are a Coast Guard community. Children move in, move out, and things of that nature. But, you know, we still follow the trend for each of our school years for these particular groups of children. This one right here is our high school end of course proficiency, and is based on, of course, these subjects for English 2 across the district, which is also including all of our high schools. We were at 43.7%. Math 1 was at 9.9%. Math 3 is 26.8%, and our biology was at 29.9%. This last slide for us is simply the data from 2018 for our other high school indicators, which include our ACT work keys, and our 4- and 5-year graduation cohorts. As you can see, in 2018 and 19, we had 36.6 for our ACT. And unfortunately, because due to the pandemic for the 18-19 school year, we did not receive that particular data. So there is none on that particular chart. However, if you go down to the bottom chart where we have the 2021 data, it actually increased. Our ACT scores increased in the midst of all that we've gone through to 48.8%. So, you know, that is a plus for our district. Work keys in 18-19 was 58.6. It did, however, drop down to 52.6 in this particular year. As far as our graduation rates, the four-year graduation rate in 18-19 was 80.7. And then once we went into the 19-20 year, we went to 77.6. This particular year, we went down to 75.8. The 5-year, and I'm going to explain the 4-year. The 4-year, of course, is when our students enter as freshmen and they actually graduate within the 4 years and they graduate as seniors together. This 5-year cohort graduation rate is when they do start as freshmen, but then they go to alternative pathways and they may go and get a GED or go into some other type of program, but they are still in our cohort because they started with us. So if you look at the 5-year graduation for the 18-19 school year, it is 85.5. And then of course, when it goes over to the 19-21, I feel like that's 83, but I don't have good eyes right now. Why am I doing that? Okay, thank you, Ms. Carreza. And then, of course, in the last one, which is this particular year, we are now at 80.6 for the 5-year graduation. So it does change, just like Dr. Ingram just said, we are a transient place. We change things all the time. Children change, but we have got to be resilient and we can come back. Are there any questions of any of this data at this moment? Yes, Mr. Spence.
So thank you, Ms. Griffith. So some of these lower scores that we're seeing, we contribute that to the pandemic and not being in school?
I feel like there's a lot of different factors that could contribute to that. I mean, this was a totally different year that none of us have ever experienced, from teaching virtually, from being home half the year, from attendance to support at home. I think it's just a combination of a lot of things. And it just happened to show up through assessments.
So yeah, so that's real. That's real. So and it may be tough for me to ask you this question.
If it's too tough, I'll let Dr. Spencer answer.
So with us going to go to this virtual option. No, don't go away. Don't go yet. Okay. What systems do we have in place to push these numbers on an upward tick? I'm aware that we may not get to where we want to be. I got that. But with us this year already facing some of the challenges that we faced last year, which is what you said, we contributed to a lot of the stuff happened last year. And we're about to go into this similar cycle for this year. What do we have in place that hopefully is going to put us on an upward tick that we're not doing right now? I mean, that just going to be different than what last year was. Because the numbers where they look now, I would hate to see them go in the other direction. I say that politely. Because who would want to come to, I don't know, who would want to come to our district with members? Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Deferring to me. And what I can tell you is this, our trends match the national trends. And I can tell you math took a huge hit and it did nationally. They said the reading didn't do as poorly as math, and our data reflects that as well. One of the things that's different this year is the fact that now, in addition to what we had last year, we also have quarantine students who are now out. And so you have the students that are out virtually, but now you also have students that are being quarantined and being out, which is why we wanted to have opportunity for them to at least receive some type of live instruction. With that being said, we do have things in place for those teachers when they're not covering for quarantine classes and things for the MTSS, which is the multi-tiered system of support. We do have things in place for our instructional coaches to help facilitate conversations about instruction and also being intentional about design for instruction for teachers and small groups. And so we do have things in place, but what we are finding is that everything is complicated again by this pandemic.
So this year different than last year. We have some different things in place than last year, or it's the same thing?
We weren't asking the teachers to teach simultaneously. We were asking for additional support after hours for those students. So when you're looking at live instruction and also having asynchronous instruction, but then also having meetings after hours. We did have a huge attendance problem last year. We had students and teachers, I listened to teachers over the summer that said we had students that came on and they attended with their icon, and then they would close out the meeting, if you will, but the icon would remain. And so you knew that the student necessarily wasn't in attendance for the entire time. Additionally, they didn't, some students didn't do the assignments. And then again, while we're looking at those test scores, we have to remember too that not all of the students came in and assessed either. And so there's lots of factors that contributed to that.
So now I'll shift a little bit. So now I want to speak as a parent. So my wife and I, we're heavily involved in our child's education. And I'm sure on this call, on this Zoom, this meeting tonight, you have a lot of parents on there. What suggestions would you give to us parents to help the system to cause that number go into an upward tick?
Be supportive of what that education is that's happening with that classroom teacher. Be engaged. The teachers I know reached out to parents. I know that parents were working, and so we did have a lot of students that were at home, and the parents thought the students were logging on, and they were not. And so I think it's a commitment from our parents and our educators, all of us really, to ensure that our students are going to school and they're doing what's being asked. And if the students have questions, to advocate for themselves. I had to do that with my own children. Oftentimes they would come home and they'd ask me because, you know, I'm a teacher and I might not have the answers because that isn't what I was teaching at that time. But I was like, why don't you ask your teacher? And it was like, well, you know, I don't want to look stupid, or I don't want to look like I don't. I mean, we all have kids and we understand that, right? But at the end of the day, it's good for our students to ask questions and to engage in that learning. Teachers want the students to ask the questions. I don't think I've ever met a teacher that was like, you can't ask questions. Oftentimes teachers ask questions because the students aren't. And we need to be able to switch that a bit and have the students actively engaged in asking those questions, because that's where true critical thinking and learning comes. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Spencer or Ms. Griffin?
Is there any way you can look at the data and identify, for example, students who were not successful with the testing? Were those primarily students who were not engaged? Is there any way you can determine that through the data?
Possibly could pull the non-proficient students, and then I would just have to go back and look through their historical data in PowerSchool, and then I could work on that and pull it, and I also may be able to pull up their attendance record as well.
That's what I'm curious about. I'm curious to see how many students who did poorly on the testing, of those students, were those students who were disengaged, who were not logging in every day as they were supposed to. They were not getting their assignments completed.
Yes, ma'am. I could pull that. I believe I could definitely do that. Now, I won't be able to do it in one day.
No, no.
But I definitely could get started working on it and pull that data. I do have that.
I think that would be, as a teacher. I think that's telling us it's time to go. That's the dismissal bell. No, as a teacher, I would be very interested to see the students who were not engaged, if they were in fact the ones who did very poorly.
Yes, ma'am. I could definitely do that, and I can get it back to you.
Of course, the teachers could do that, right?
They should be able to, yes.
Yeah. They could determine that.
I already know the answer to this question, but I want to ask it publicly because I've already asked you this.
I think I already know too, but I'm just.
Do you know, when I was in the state several years ago, we used to get an item analysis.
Yes.
Do we get that?
No.
No. Okay. Now, all right. Now you're going to hear the story. Okay.
Yes.
I'm not going to be quiet anymore. Sorry,
Yes.
Tammy.
Yes.
Sorry.
But it would be wonderful if we could get that. 'Cause
Yeah,
that way
well,
we could
see,
definitely
okay, now I
pinpoint
want the state to listen
where
to
we
this.
need to
These
work.
tests are real important, right? They're real important. They're so important it determines whether a school's an A, B, C, D, or F. I see Mr. Spence smiling because he knows what I'm going to say. But yet we don't know what we got wrong on the test. So when I used to teach Latin and I gave a test to Mr. Pereza, attorney extraordinaire, he saw what he got wrong. He didn't get much wrong, believe me, he was a very good student. But he knew what to study the next time. If we don't even know what we got wrong on the test, how can we get better on the test?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Agree.
That's not a slam on you, Nina.
No, sir, I
And
never
you know
take
that
it.
because you knew what I was going to say.
I knew you were going to ask.
So how important is the test? And if we start to improve the scores on the test, then they change the cut score and the cut score goes up and the bar gets higher. So I'm not saying the tests are evil. Standardized tests can be very valuable. They can be very valuable, all seriousness aside. Sarcasm over. They can be very valuable. It's the way they're used. They're used as a one measure to determine the success of a school, of a teacher, of a kid, and no one standardized measure on a given day is going to determine the outcome of a kid's life if I've got anything to say about it. And I started to say something about it in my first article in the Daily Advance Saturday. If you didn't read it, I just started it. And I in fact, I might get in trouble when I get home. I told my 10-year-old granddaughter, I told her parents last year, don't take the test. Well, I'll fail the fourth grade. No, you're not going to fail the fourth grade. Don't take it. You make A's and everything else. We spend nearly $600,000 a year on trying to make a few more points on these tests. $600,000 a year, over $500,000. And all we really need to do, according to E.D. Hirsch from the University of Virginia, is if we know the questions ahead of time and we practice the answers, we'll probably get a few points higher. And how many times have we taken practice tests after practice test after practice test? All I'm saying is that is not sufficient. Those are not sufficient strategies for our children to be successful in the 21st century. And I'm going to engage in that conversation with whoever will listen long after my tenure here ends, because I care about these kids, just like you do. And I care about the staff that works so hard, and I hate seeing their hearts broken over something that at the end of the day is almost geared and stacked against them. It is accountability by zip code. Make no mistake, it is accountability by zip code. We do not have failing schools. We have a failed accountability system at state and federal levels. So there, I said it. Tammy, you can faint later, but that's the truth of the matter. But we'll take the test. We'll try to do the best we can. We'll be honest. We're not going to fudge. We're not going to cheat. We'll study. We'll do the best we can. But I don't want our folks keeling over about them. Because truth of the matter is, you've got teachers that will run away from school districts because they're afraid of what someone's going to say their kid does on the test. You've got principals who won't take certain schools. You've even got superintendents that won't go to certain states or districts. And that's got to change, because we got to have our best people, not our worst or our less experienced, I should say. And that's what this high stakes testing program has done. They've even had lawsuits. In South Carolina, had a lawsuit. A testing company sued another because it didn't get the bid to administer the test. So you don't think this is big money? This is big, big money. And we shouldn't be held hostage by these tests, because our teachers are better, our kids are better, our board members are better, our schools are better than we've been labeled. And I'm not going to stand by and watch it. Not after 41 years, no siree. So my old person rant is over, Mr. Spence, for now. But your questions are good. But we used to get those item analysis, and they were helpful because you could see a trend. Oh, we didn't teach fractions very well because so many kids missed this area, and we don't get that information. So if I just get a number, I don't have an intelligent way of getting better. And that's just one example. And then in the great state of South Carolina, they don't apply a confidence interval, which basically means rounding up. Okay, so what's psychometrician? This side of Mars wouldn't round up. They're assuming that every question on a test is valid and reliable, and that that every score is valid and reliable when some kids were home all year and some kids were in school all year. No. So anyway, I appreciate the effort that everybody's making. I just think that we can decide as a community and identify a more robust way of holding our students and our teachers and our educators accountable. And I hope to be engaged in those discussions as we move forward. So I conclude my remarks. I apologize for my length. I do not apologize for my passion.
Thank you. If there are no more questions.
Any other questions for Ms. Griffin or Dr. Spencer? All right,
She
thank
didn't
you.
say me.
Thank you.
I do have one question about the new initiative that's being put out by the superintendent of education, the Polaris. Have you studied that? And how is that going to approach this issue that we have with testing? Do you have enough familiarity with it at this point to say?
I've looked a little bit at it, but I can tell you that there has already been a memo that's been sent out about retesting in the future as far as this coming up school year and having the opportunity for students to retest after summer school. And I think that is extended a little bit, whereas in the past they haven't done that. But to the extent of what that's going to look like, no. I know that there's been some investigations and some considerations. But as far as the in-depth of it, it just came, as you said, yes.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
And that's it for our committee.
Okay, we're going to move on to the policy committee. Ms. Houston.
We have before you tonight policy PC 017510, which deals with leave, and policy PC 024231-5021-7263, which is face coverings, and coming before us tonight. It's Tammy.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, Committee Chair Houston, Interim Superintendent Ingram, board members, and community. I come before you this evening to share a couple of policy-related items. First, Policy 7510, leave policy, was updated at our last meeting to accurately reflect that sick leave and vacation leave are allowed to be taken in whole and half-day increments. However, the temporary requirement related to COVID-19 was not available in the last update that I shared with you. This policy now includes required language that removes the need for an employee to provide an employee health certificate to return to work and to follow the guidelines for meeting their criteria from NCD-HHS and NCDPI for their return. This is a required policy update in adherence to state guidelines for COVID. Okay? Policy 4231, 5021, 7263. This policy has been provided in compliance with Session Law 2021-130, specifically Section 10. Boards are now required to develop policies surrounding face coverings and to revisit said policy monthly. The policy before you was provided as an update from the NCSBA, the North Carolina School Boards Association, and has been reviewed and slightly amended by our board attorney, Mr. John Leidy. The addition that Mr. Leidy provided to the proposed policy includes a statement that provides for the superintendent to develop procedures and forms as necessary to determine whether an exemption should be granted under this policy and applicable law. The policy will require board approval. The procedures and forms developed by the superintendent will not require board approval. They will be administrative regulations. I request the board consider these policies before you today and review them until our next meeting on September 27th. I am not requesting they be placed on the consent agenda as indicated. However, I would like to bring them back before you next week for approval under the action agenda. This will allow the opportunity for you to continue your review, ask questions, and seek clarification. Policy 2420 states that policies shall be introduced and recommended to the board in writing, but not be adopted until a subsequent meeting. We have a policy that would allow us to circumvent waiting until a subsequent meeting. However, I feel it's important for you to have time to review and ensure there are no questions or clarifications. That concludes my presentation. Any questions?
So is it appropriate now for me to offer a motion for us to put it on the agenda for Monday night for action?
That doesn't require a
That
motion.
doesn't require a motion.
I'll add it to the action agenda. Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our.
Thank you, Ms. Sawyer. We are now ready to go into closed session, so I am going to ask, Dr. Williams had to leave for an engagement that she had this evening. So I'm going to ask Ms. Pereza, you have done this before, to take us into closed session.
Okay. I make a motion that the board go into closed session for the purpose of considering personnel actions that involve employees of this board as allowed by NC Statute 143-318.11A6.
Been moved and seconded that we go into closed session, and at this time, we need a vote. Roll call.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton, Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams left, Mr. Archuleta,
Yes.
and Ms. Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.